Dr Annelle Rodriguez Sheline, former State Department and Research Fellow for the Middle East at the Quincy Institute, joins us now on this really quite tumultuous moment, Doctor. It's lovely to see you again. Everyone enjoyed your previous appearance on the show. Let's start, if I may, with the situation that appears to exist, though I enter the caveat that it might all be a ruse, that Donald Trump has ordered Benjamin Netanyahu to stop bombing Gaza. Not least because you can't recover the hostages while you're bombing Gaza. And Netanyahu is defying him. Is this dichotomy real or false?
It's really unclear at this point. I mean, I think what's important to keep in mind is that Trump knows how to get Netanyahu to listen to him because he was able to do it in January. He achieved that ceasefire. And my understanding of how he did that was he threatened the American weapons and the vast amounts of money that the United States sends to Israel every year. So clearly Trump knows how to get what he wants. It's just not yet clear if he was willing to threaten Netanyahu with that kind of measure this time, because thus far, I like everyone, initially was waiting to see if perhaps we were going to have an end to Israeli bombs murdering Gazan babies, Palestinian babies in Gaza. And obviously that has not yet happened. The reports are that there are teams of negotiators. The Israeli team, including Ron Dermer, are supposed to meet tomorrow to hammer out the details, I suppose. But as you have mentioned, and as others have noted, Trump said on Truth Social that Netanyahu needs to stop bombing, and he has not done so. And then, as you pointed out, he removed that post. And so thus far, it does not appear as if Trump threatened the supply of American weapons, or if he did so, it doesn't seem as if Netanyahu is taking that seriously.
There's the usual trail and from the usual suspects that Trump is furious with Netanyahu. He's swearing at him. Why do you always have to be so effing negative? This is a win. Take it. All kinds of vernacular being deployed. The question is, I never know whether to believe it, because in the past it has turned out to be false. But we can only count the bombs. 93 separate air raids took place on Gaza, on people in tents, on people in the rubble, on people in United Nations schools. Just in the last 24 hours, 100 were killed, God knows how many murdered and mutilated. Makes you wonder if Netanyahu is really all that keen on getting these hostages back at all.
I'm so tired of that talking point because I don't know how anyone continues to find it credible. Because, I mean, this is part of, in the response from the Hamas officials that was sent on Friday, where I think they were being quite strategic in that they agreed to release hostages, and which is, again, something that they have been willing to do for months. Even as early as November 2023, they offered to give back all of the hostages in exchange for a real lasting ceasefire and an end to the bombardment and allowing in aid again. And Israel was uninterested in doing so. And so the fact that there has continued to be this narrative that, well, if they just gave back the hostages, Israel could stop bombing, I just don't understand who is still buying this. And I mean, again, it is like so many things. I think when you have sort of motivated reasoning, or you have someone who is only interested in sort of understanding things from one perspective, then they're unwilling to sort of accept the reality of what's going on here. But it is I don't understand how that line continues to work because you do still have people saying things like this that, well, that if Hamas just gave back the hostages, why don't they just give back the hostages? And it's just like, well, they have been trying to do that. So many times they have tried to do that. And every time they try, Israel changes the terms of the agreement and says, no, no, we're just going to keep bombing. And it should be so abundantly clear to everyone that Israel's intention is to kill as many people as possible in Gaza in order to get the rest to leave, as you were saying earlier, in order to take over this territory here. This is a land dispute. And the fact that Israel continues to use the justification of hostages just demonstrates how useful it is to have the hostages there. I think they understand that is kind of, to the extent that anyone still believes anything they say, this line about if Hamas just gave back the hostages, well, as soon as Hamas does that, then everyone's going to say, well, why, like Israel, how do you justify the fact that you're continuing to bomb, which is why Israel does not want the hostages back?
Of course, I mean, there's a lot of sheep in the world, Doctor. It doesn't take many sheepdogs to corral a lot of sheep. Even the very nomenclature here, the Israelis are hostages. What are the 10,000 Palestinian prisoners?
Exactly.
Are they hostages?
Exactly.
Why
Right.
are they
They are.
prisoners, captives, when the Israelis are hostages? Israel has
Exactly.
said they will give back, they will release the women and children that they hold. Who knew Israel was holding women and children? How
Right.
is that possible? How is that legal? Let's talk about the flotilla, because I'm keen to take advantage of your qualification, your expertise. Just confirm for us, will you, that seizing a ship in international waters is in itself unlawful. Then to remove people from those ships and hold them in prison is unlawful. And it goes without saying, to torture, mistreat, maltreat, force prisoners to kiss your flag, take pictures of them doing so, and so on. All of this is a multiple criminal indictment we're looking at here.
That is absolutely true, but I think none of that is surprising given what we know the Israeli government is capable of. What I have been shocked by is the fact that there are Americans held and US officials have done essentially nothing. You are starting to hear a few American politicians stepping up. So, for example, David Adler is, I believe, the only Jewish, or one of the only individuals on board the flotilla who's Jewish. He's an American citizen. His representatives, the senators from California, Adam Schiff and Alex Padilla, have said nothing. Nothing. And so instead, you have the senator from Maryland, Van Hollen, talking about this. You have Ro Khanna, who's a House representative from California, although I don't believe he's actually David's particular House representative. They're stepping up and calling for his members of Congress to do something about the fact that he is still being held in horrific conditions, I'm sure, inside of Israel. The fact that Israel is mistreating prisoners, we know they routinely starve and murder Palestinian prisoners every day. However, the fact that even Democratic senators and members of Congress who ostensibly could get a political win out of this, the fact that for so many Americans, but in particular Democrats, no longer support unconditional support to Israel, this could be a way for them to show, hey, maybe in the past I wasn't willing to criticize Israel, but now when they have an American and they are torturing him, or at the very least severely mistreating him and not releasing him and not allowing him to speak with his family or his lawyers, even just for a purely cynical political point, this could be wise for them to do, even if, they personally may not care. But this is where the country is going politically. And so many Democrats continue to be on the AIPAC payroll, continue to accept money from the Israel lobby, continue to kiss the ring, and even when it hurts them politically, which again is fairly shocking because generally you can count on politicians to do what makes the most sense for them to try to win their next election.
Indeed, that means they're bought and paid for, Doctor, and that they cannot. Trust me, I was a member of Parliament across 5 different decades, 7 times. And I'm here to tell you, and I don't think American politicians are different, most politicians care only about continuing to be politicians. It's a good job, good pay, no heavy lifting. You can wear a clean shirt and still be clean at the end of the day. You get sired or madamed everywhere you go. And in the American case, you're likely to read the stock market better than any pundit will ever do. And you'll leave 10 times,
I was going to make that point, certainly.
Richer.
In the U.S. system, you have a lot of opportunities
richer.
to become wealthy as a politician or a member of Congress.
So that, I mean, it's got to be cash or compromise, isn't it? These people have been captured by cash, which is, of course, a form of compromise because you've got the video of it being handed over, or other kinds of compromise. It's the only thing that explains the conduct of politicians in a conduct which is diametrically opposed to their own interest. No politician acts against their own interest unless they have no choice.
Well, and I think it does just speak to the ways in which our politics are so captured. And so even though from the perspective of, in a functioning democracy, they would need to pay closer attention to where voters are on these issues, they can trust that in our deeply compromised political system, as long as they continue to abide by the AIPAC talking points, then the checks will keep flowing, and they're more likely to hang on to their seats or win their next election that way with an abundance of resources than they are by actually adopting policies that appeal to their constituents. And this so many people here. And I don't know to what extent this is kind of relevant to your audience, but so many Americans keep wringing their hands about the Democrats being so ineffective in the face of Trump's fascism. And I think it's very difficult to be an effective politician when your interests are best served by serving the billionaire class that both parties are so in league with. So it is.
Checks don't always work, though, Doctor, do they? I mean, Thomas Massey, they have moved heaven and earth to destroy him, and my guess is he's going to win handsomely. Marjorie Taylor Greene, these are 2 people from Trump's own base. Marjorie Taylor Greene is openly saying to AIPAC and the lobby, if you want to have a go, come on. You won't beat me in Georgia. And my guess is that they would not. So it's a sort of diminishing asset, the AIPAC check and the AIPAC endorsement. The day will come, will it not, where the AIPAC endorsement will be a toxic one indeed.
I think that day is coming, although it's not coming soon enough. And unfortunately, although you do have some very brave people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey, there are still far too few. And in particular, though, they are, I think someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene in particular knows that there's this incompatibility between an America First agenda and an Israel First agenda. And to the extent, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, to the extent that Trump recognizes that it's going to be more and more difficult to maintain this facade of so-called America First, when in fact it is so evident that your foreign policy is absolutely about putting Israel first, as was the case with Biden, as has long been the case in American politics. But when your whole brand is America First, it makes it much harder to explain. And I do think Trump is well aware of this. However, unfortunately, whether it's just Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massie, who Trump has come out very explicitly against, whereas thus far I think Marjorie Taylor Greene has been able to sort of keep on Trump's side on other issues and has not necessarily criticized him as directly. I think she is kind of walking a very narrow path, and we'll see how much longer she's able to maintain that. But again, I think because she is speaking to many people who voted for Trump who don't understand how this policy could be interpreted as in any way America first.
Quite so. Because of my profession and also my age, I can tell you that Trump's main thought now will be his legacy. It will be, have I left the Republican Party in my own image? Have I left it in such a way that my children, my allies, my friends will be able to inherit and meaningfully have a chance of being elected, have a chance of carrying on my agenda. But more and more, I'm thinking that Trump is throwing it all away. And it's difficult for me to conclude other than that he's doing so because he has no choice. I think he's been Epsteined. What do you think?
Certainly looks that way, doesn't it? And there's certainly an abundance of evidence that the two were quite close. And we know that Israel has done things like this in the past, including with Bill Clinton. Um, I don't have access to any particular information, beyond what everyone else has, but it certainly does seem that whether it's Epstein or something, that Israel seems to have something on Trump because he was willing in January to get the ceasefire, which again was just to show that he could do what Biden couldn't or really wouldn't do, achieve that ceasefire. And subsequently, Trump has not been willing to exert that same pressure again. And so the question does then become, what is it that Israel has on him, given that this is fracturing his base? And as you say, really throwing his legacy into question, although there are certainly plenty of Republicans that are already wearing Trump 2028 t-shirts. I think they're concerned that would just be his own mortality.
Well, yeah, well, that might be some they've got in mind. But lastly, you mentioned Biden and by extension the Democrats. Nature abhors a vacuum. Surely this is the minute for somebody on the Democratic Party side to step forward with a wholly different policy towards. I mean, if I was in America, that's definitely what I'd be doing. I'd be saying, this is entirely the wrong road that we are on. Here's the road we now need to take to get ourselves out of this. And I'd be stomping the country, seeking the nomination. So why has that not happened? Or might it yet?
I certainly hope it will. I mean, the excitement over Zohran Mamdani as the mayoral candidate for New York City, that's something the entire country is paying attention to, and progressives certainly see him and someone in that mold as the hoped for future of the party. I had friends who just named their baby Zohran. I mean, people are really excited
Wow.
about this possibility. But again, he's thus far the Democratic establishment has been largely unwilling to endorse him. I think these old habits die hard. Sorry, you can hear my dog in the background. Um, and and again, I fear that what AIPAC and what the Israel lobby and has been able to accomplish is to frighten people. So the fact that you had them primary Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, get them out of their seats in Congress, although Cori Bush is going to be running again for her seat in St. Louis, and so
Yes.
it's possible she may be able to come back. But I think that there are probably many people in Congress who are, like you said, people just want to continue to hold their seat. and are not really willing to take a stand. And so thus far, I heard you when you were saying there aren't that many artists willing to stand up for Gaza. You mentioned Eric Clapton and Roger Waters, but you are starting to see more, in particular, around film. The voice of Hind Rajab, the fact that that got major stars act as producers, the fact that you are increasingly hearing people, when they have a chance to speak out publicly, say something about Gaza. I do think increasingly it's now starting to be a little bit of a question kind of among myself and the other people who resigned from the Biden administration. We just put out a statement with the Huffington Post condemning the fact that you have people like Jake Sullivan or various other people from the Biden administration who say, well, when we had power, it was not yet time to condition arms to Israel. But now it is time to condition arms to Israel, which is ridiculous because there was starvation in Gaza when you were in power. There was already a genocide underway when you were in power. So don't try to pretend. And the reason they're doing this is because they see where the public sentiment is on this, and they want to launder their reputations such that they could have a place in a future Democratic administration if such a thing ever happens again. And so the point we were making in our statement is that although it is good that people who previously didn't view this as a genocide are now understanding that it is, or people that previously were more on the Israeli side are now saying, all right, well, this has gone far enough. I can no longer justify this. Like that's how you get a social movement. You need people to change their minds, and that's how we build pressure on this. But for people who were in positions of power and it directly enabled the genocide, they don't get to launder their reputations. They don't get to pretend as if they have a moral compass suddenly and that they should be permitted to have a position of power again, because they're the reason we are where we are. So I do think that while we do need to have a big tent approach to this, and as more and more people see this for what it is and pay attention and come out against it, we should welcome those people, even if we wish they had come on board sooner. But again, for people who could have done something about this and instead enabled genocide, they don't get to have a position of power again, in my opinion.